and welcome to our first WallaSauce DIY tutorial. Today we will be showing you how to weave a circular rag rug using common household materials. You will need a round hoop or large piece of cardboard, a hula hoop or something similar for the loom, 2 t-shirts for the warp, approximately 6 t-shirts or other tubular pieces of material for the weft, jeans or pants, plastic bags, socks, pillowcases, scissors that can cut through your chosen material, and a small space to work. To begin, we are going to make continuous balls of yarn out of our chosen materials. I prefer to use t-shirts because they are abundant and have a high yield of yarn, but you can use anything. First, cut your t-shirt below the armpits in a straight line so that you are left with a tubular piece of material. Put the top aside. Flatten out the tube so that the closed edges are in front of you. Cut the material from one end to another, leaving approximately 1 to 2 inches of space at the opposite end. Do this all the way across the material from left to right. If you cut down all the way by accident, it's no big deal. You can still use those pieces. When done cutting, lift the material by the uncut edge and lay it flat. It should look similar to a spine with a rib cage. Keep the spine on top. Using your hand to separate the spine from the strips underneath, cut from the middle of the spine edge to meet the first cut of the first strip. Then, cut from one side of the spine to the other, connecting each strip. This creates a diagonal cutting pattern from one strip to the next. As you cut, you will see your material begin to elongate as one complete piece. Do this until you reach your last strip, where you will cut diagonally on the edge of the spine between the 2 strips, similar to the first cut. When you're done, if using t-shirt or knit fabric, detangle and stretch out your continuous strip of material. The edges will curl up and the length of your yarn will double. Then, roll the strip into a ball and tuck the loose ends underneath. And there you go. Repeat this process for all your chosen weft materials. To make my cutting distance shorter, here I folded my closed edge over to meet about 2 inches short of my other edge. I'm also using a rotary tool and cutting mat to make this process a little faster. Remember to be careful if you use these, and to work slowly and attentively. Avoid thickly screen printed areas on t-shirts because it will limit the stretch of your yarn once it's cut. You can also utilize the sleeves on t-shirts to make smaller lengths of yarn. The weft is the main woven part of your rug and the most visible part, so create a palette that you enjoy. Here I am using my arm to guide the spine and ribs as I cut across. I find this helpful with longer and more narrow pieces of material, like the legs of jeans, pants, long sleeves, etc.
No worries. Let me just refigure the equation here.
Next, we are going to make the loops for our warp. The warp consists of the strings in which the weft is woven over and under. For this process, you will need 2 to 3 t-shirts specifically for their stretchy quality. Start by cutting the material into a tubular shape the same way you did to make the yarn. This time, we're going to cut completely across our tube, creating individual loops of material. Stretch each loop out and put aside. You can use as many different colors as you'd like, however the weft is not as visible as the warp, except at the beginning of the weave and at your tied ends. You will see these colors mostly at the center point of your finished rug. To warp your loom, stretch one loop equal distance across your circle from one side to the other. Right down the middle. Try to keep these as centered as possible, but they don't have to be perfect. Add another loop across the previous, creating an X or a plus sign shape. Add another loop between the previous two, splitting the distance evenly on both sides. Keep doing this until you have 8 loops. After the 8th loop, assess which areas on your loom have a little extra space and add 4 more warp strings in between them. Adjust the edges of your strips around the hoop as needed. You should end with 12 total warp loops, or 24 strings all the way around. Here is an example of a cardboard loom warped similarly. To begin, you will need a small scrap of yarn. Choose 2 of your warp loops and tie only the bottom 2 strings together as shown, closest to the edge of the hoop so that they are joined as one string. This step is essential to the process. If this is skipped, mathematically your rug will not work. Next, choose the first ball of yarn and attach one end to the same 2 strings, tying them together closest to the middle of the warp, as shown. Keep the knot on top. To begin weaving, tuck your ball of yarn underneath the single string to the right of your tied string. For now, we are going to treat each entire warp loop as one piece, except for the group where we tied off. So then, weave over the next grouped warp string and under the third. Gently tuck the yarn towards the center as you weave. Continue this over and under alternating pattern until you reach your tied strings. When you reach your tied set of strings, weave as you were, but pay close attention to how your weft alternates. You will now be weaving over the strings you had previously gone under. This is what you want. If you notice you are weaving over the same strings as your previous lap, chances are you doubled up somewhere or skipped a string completely. The tied off set of strings is an alternating point essential to your weave, so it's important to pay attention each time you cross over or under to make sure your alternation is correct. The first 2 laps are the hardest, establishing shape and rhythm, so do not be discouraged if you need to go slow or unwind and redo any areas. Toward the end of your second lap, you should see a circular shape starting to form around the center point. Keep pushing the weft towards the middle. Continue this weave until your 7th lap around, and then stop. Now we're going to add a new piece of yarn. Take the end of your already woven piece and cut a small hole in the middle of the material. Make sure the hole is not too big or else joining them will tear the fabric. Choose your new piece of yarn and cut a hole in one end the same way you did for the woven piece. I like to call this the Ouroboros method. Take the head of your new piece of yarn and insert it through the hole in your woven piece. Then, take the tail end of your new piece of yarn and insert it through the hole in the other end of the new piece. Imagine a snake eating its tail. Pull the tail end all the way through until the pieces join together in a fake knot, and then wrap them. So starting your 7th lap, we are now going to separate each pair of warp loops into individual warp strings, still alternating over and under. Once going past your tied string, begin to weave your same alternation, but instead, weave in between each pair of strings. If it's easier to visualize, go by color. Under, over, tuck. Under, over, tuck. Be sure to tuck the weft with your fingers, do not pull, and straighten the warp strings as needed as you go around. In the end, you're now going over and under twice as many strings as before. Pay attention to your double. For the first 2 laps doing this separation, things may appear a bit strange in pattern, similar to the initial 2 laps we did at the beginning of the rug. But once completing the second round weaving through the doubles, you will see how the weaves fall into place more clearly. Pay attention to your alternation, and remember there's nothing wrong with having to undo and redo a lap if you make a mistake. It's better to do so when you notice the discrepancy rather than throw off your whole weave for the future. And now you could sit back and relax while you continue this weave until your rug is about 3 to 4 inches from the edge of the hoop. Remember to continuously tuck and shape the center weave as you rotate your loom. Tension is very important when weaving on any loom. Here, pulling too much instead of tucking the yarn in towards the center will cause your finished product to be rippled, and as a result, it won't sit flat properly. Another fun way to use this method is to take advantage of the tension and pull your weft as tight as possible all the way around, all the way through the weaving process. This creates a cupping effect that results in a woven fabric bowl when you cut it off of the loom. But here, since we want to make a flat weave, having little to no tension in your weave is important. Using high stretch materials like t-shirts and leggings can make settling into a tension rhythm more difficult, but once you get a feel for your material, it should be much more comfortable to use. For an example, my first 4 rugs were not rugs, they were bowls and 1 cat bed. So don't get discouraged if things don't go the way you want the first time. Just reassess your personal process and identify where the problem lies and go from there. For this tutorial, I'm using all t-shirt fabrics, but don't be afraid to throw some denim in there, some plastic. You can use upcycled mailers and plastic bags to make yarn as well. So be creative in your own process and find what works best for you. Remember to pay attention to your tension, especially as you get further towards the edge of your rug and your stitches become wider. To secure your completed rug, we need to remove it from the hoop. First, tie the remaining end of your weft string to the closest warp string. One secure knot is fine. Untie your 2 tied strings and cut each warp loop off of the loom, one at a time, and tie them in a knot. Be careful not to pull too tight when tying the ends off, or you might experience some curling. And then you're going to do this all the way around your rug until it's completely removed from the loom. If you have any problems with your tension, this is where you'll notice. And you're done. Thanks for watching. Send us pictures of your rugs and we'll feature them on our Instagram page. And check out our shop at wallasauce.com.